For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. Hey guys, it's Becky. I have an unplanned video. Sometimes those are not that major and monumental. They're just kind of ideas that pop in my head. But sometimes they are pretty significant, and they're pulls at my heart that I feel like didn't come from me. I feel like they came from God, and I always share this with you guys, even if I don't know if one person is going to watch it, or even if it's only going to help one person, but that's okay. Even if this helps only one person, it's worth it. And I'm going to throw this out there to kind of let you know what popped into my mind, what came out of my heart, and what I truly feel like God told me. Either he was telling me for myself, or maybe he told me because he wanted me to share it with you guys. 2020 was a very, very hard year. So many things happened that we would never want to happen. Violence, hatred, corruption, people turning on each other, families and friends being split apart by differences of opinion or political party. And you guys know I don't get political on my channel, so I'm not going to get into politics, but I'm just saying I know that families and friends have been split apart because of political choices. And those things didn't just happen in 2020. These things that we saw in 2020 have been bubbling under the surface for years. Who knows how long? It's kind of like a lottery ticket. It's right under the surface. All it takes is a little scratching it off and everything is exposed. And that's exactly what happens. And just like you don't gain 20 pounds overnight, these things that happened in 2020 have been in the making for a very, very long time. And it's just 2020 was the magnifying glass that brought all of these issues into full and clear view. So it was a magnifying glass on how complacent we've all been in our lives. If for Christians, it could possibly be a magnifying glass on how complacent we've all been as Christians. It's a magnifying glass on how we saw our government and our rights as citizens. It was a magnifying glass on who we are as people. And I'm not happy with most of what occurred in 2020, but sometimes you don't realize that there is a problem or how big the problem is until it's staring you right in the face. And like I said, all of these things are not new problems. It was just 2020 brought out the severity of how big they are, how many problems there are, and how deep they run. So maybe 2020 was the wake-up call that we all needed to examine how we were living our lives, what's truly in our hearts, and what our priorities are. So if nothing else, this video is hopefully going to be making sense of 2020 and giving us hope for 2021. I think that's what we all want. We all need that, whether you're a Christian or not. I think we all want hope that we can move beyond 2020 and make 2021 different and beyond that. 2020 was very uncomfortable for various reasons, for different people, for different reasons. The severity was different for everybody, but it was extremely uncomfortable. But with discomfort comes learning and growth. And just like I mentioned the weight loss thing earlier, or weight gain thing, when you're working out, it is the discomfort that you actually make progress. It is the tearing of muscles that you actually build strength. And it's the same thing with this. And like I said, we all, myself included, are and were very complacent in our lives as American citizens, what we took for granted, as Christians, what we kind of just stayed under the radar and maybe didn't put our full faith in God. We didn't have enough of a relationship with him. We didn't have enough faith with him. We did all these different things. But hopefully, and possibly, the point of 2020 was to lead us to God. Whether we are already Christians and maybe we just were not strong enough in our faith, maybe we're not in fellowship enough with him, maybe we needed to work on building our faith in him or our relationship with him, and maybe people who aren't Christians. You know, that's God's ultimate goal, is to save and have as many people go to heaven as possible. So if what we had to deal with in 2020 saved lives and helped people in their eternal life, then in God's eyes, maybe that's the reason. I'm not saying it is. I'm not God. And I'm not making light of all the horrible things that happened and all the people that died or the people that lost people that they loved. I'm not making light of that. I'm just saying sometimes when really bad things happen, that's all you can really do, is try to find the good that can come out of it, and possibly the good that God has planned for us from something that seems so ugly and horrible. He obviously has a plan to better us. And so if he's going to use that, maybe he's using that. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing this out there to give you kind of something to think about. Whatever the hardships that we all experienced in 2020, God is still in control. He knew 2020 was going to happen before he even created the earth. He knew all of the bad things people were going to do. He knew all of the terrible things that were going to happen. He knew of all the sad things that were going to happen. He knew of all the injustices that were going to be served to people, various people. He knew all that stuff. He knows all that stuff because it's part of his plan. But as Christians, what we do next is critical. Do we live in fear? I mean, obviously, you can't help being worried sometimes. You can't help being afraid for the state of your country, or you can't sometimes help having these concerns. At the end of the day, and every day, it may be a struggle, but we have to try our best to not live in fear. We have to try our best to remember and focus on the fact that God is in control and He's got this. Do we let our differences of opinion keep us from being kind to other people? Do we let our differences of opinion and our prejudgments of what we think certain people are like make us bitter? Do we let that lead to anger and frustration? And do we let that harden our hearts against God? Do we let that harden our hearts against other people? Hopefully not. That's why what we do now is so critical. We cannot control everything that happens in our lives, obviously. I mean, we knew that even before 2020, but I think 2020 was a very glaring example of the fact that we can't control everything. There are some things that are out of our control, but we can control ourselves. We can control who and where we focus our attention, and we can control who and where we keep our hope and faith in. Obviously, that's God. All we can do is cling to God, cling to His word, cling to His promises, and cling to other Christians in fellowship. And cling to the fact that God is in control. He is sovereign, and everything that is happening, has happened, or will happen is in His plan. We may not always like it, but it's still part of His plan. So we have to kind of let go a little bit with that and be like, okay, this is really hard. I hate this. I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. This is sad. This is scary. But it is part of God's plan. He is doing it for a reason. We don't have to know the reason. Just like a parent tells a child sometimes you can't do something. They don't always know the reason, but hopefully they'll have enough faith and trust in us to know that we're telling them that for a reason, for their own good. It's the same thing with God. He's not going to just tell us, you can't do this because of this and that, and I made this happen so this would happen. Obviously, He's not telling us those things. So we just have to have the faith and know that He is doing these things for a reason. There will be good to come from it, and we just have to have faith in that. And I posted on Instagram a few days ago, and I said, when you don't know what else to do, be the light. If nothing else, you are completely clueless to what to do next in whatever regard. All you can do is be the light. Keep being kind, keep doing the next right thing, and God's brightness shines brighter than any darkness that there is. So now I think it's more important than ever as Christians to go out and be the light and show an example of what God's love looks like, to show an example of what faith in God looks like. And like Jeremiah 29 verses 11 through 13 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart." So the Bible tells us way back then that He has plans for us, and those plans are for our good, and we have to trust in that. So if 2020 has taught us nothing else, it should teach us that everybody needs God, whether they know it or not. This is what happens to the world when we fall away from God. This is what happens to people when they are out of fellowship with God or don't believe in God. We end up with a broken world. And it also reminds us that we are to be that light. Like I said, we're to be the light, and it's more important now than ever to be examples of followers of Christ and what that looks like. So I hope this gives you some hope. I hope it gives you something to glean from 2020. When you're looking back on 2020 and you're trying to find the positives of it and make sense of it all, which a lot of us try to do because we want to kind of categorize something and call it what it is. And 2020 is very hard to sit back and think and actually do that with. But if nothing else, I hope this gives you some perspective. My perspective. I'm not God, obviously. I'm not a minister. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. These are just things that I feel like I have been told in the last few days, the last few weeks, to try to make sense of it in my own life. I hope this gives you remotivation in your relationship with God. If you already have one, if you're already a Christian, maybe you're struggling, or if you're not a Christian, I hope this gives you something to think about, because if you don't have God and you don't have a belief in God and you don't have faith in God, then I think 2020 would be even more worse for you, because you have no clue. You have no trust in the future. You have no trust in a God that is looking out for you and going to only do things for your good. that to me seems even more hopeless than 2020 already seemed. I'm trying to leave this on a positive note because I want you to think of 2020 positively. I want you to think of 2020 as the year that made you realize that you needed to step up your game as a Christian. Or 2020 is the year that you found God and you realized you needed a faith and a hope in a higher power. I hope you look back on 2020 and realize that you had way more blessings than you ever realized that you had, and some of those things we didn't realize were such blessings until they were taken away. So think of 2020 as the year that made you a better person. All of those challenges and scary, horrible things that we all experienced in 2020, let those things change you for the better. Otherwise, it's just going to be a negative experience, and it's going to work to your disadvantage to let that year drag you down instead of let that year make you better, and to let that year make you have an even closer relationship and faith and hope in God. Because if we don't do that and we let it be just a negative experience, then we went through all of those hardships for no benefit. So let 2020 expose all of those weak points in your life, spiritually, as a friend, politically, however you want to look at it. Let those weaknesses that you saw in 2020 drive you into being a better person in 2021 and beyond. And let those weaknesses that you saw in society in 2020 drive you to be an even better person in 2021. To be nicer, to be kinder, to give more grace, to be more understanding. Otherwise, like I said, all of the issues and problems and struggles and discomforts that we had in 2020 were a complete waste if we don't use them to make ourselves better people, and if we don't use them to make ourselves better Christians. So that is my perspective on looking back on 2020, trying to make sense of it, and trying to figure out going forward 2021 and beyond, how can we use what we learned in 2020 to make ourselves better individually, as Christians, as a society, as Americans. We've got to use those things to make better choices and to become better people. Otherwise, all of those lessons were lost. So if it was helpful, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Please, please, please share this with anybody that you know is struggling and had a really, really hard 2020, and they're really having even already a hard start to 2021. They maybe are getting bitter. They're having issues with, maybe feeling like 2020 was a lost year. Anybody you think would be possibly helped, please share this with them, because that is, like I said, I feel like this video was told to me to do. And I feel like I'm acting out of obedience to what I feel like God was telling me to do. And it's up to you, though, to spread it with anybody else that you think may need to hear it. And who knows if me making this video was for somebody that you know, and it took you seeing this video to share it with them. So share it if you feel like it's going to be helpful. I really hope it helped you and blessed you too. We're going to have a great 2021. It's just all in what you make it, and all in your perspective, and all in who your hope is in. And if your hope is in other people and your hope is in the government, then you're always going to be disappointed. You have to keep your hope in God, because He is the only one who has our 100% best interests at heart, who is 100% going to do what is right for us. And so if your hope is in all these other things and people and organizations, then you're always going to be disappointed. God never disappoints. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you guys have an amazing year, and obviously I'll be posting videos here on my channel, so if you're not subscribed already, make sure you do. I do homeschooling videos, mom life videos, day in the life videos, tons of different stuff. Like I said, I make a variety of videos on my channel. So if you like those types of videos, definitely make sure you subscribe before you head out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.